and welcome for joining me for yet another SpouseLink live stream. These live streams are designed for military spouses who are thinking about military retirement, experiencing military retirement, or who have crossed into retirement and are living that fabulous civilian life. I'd love it if you could just start by telling me where you're joining me from. My name is Anna Larson. I am by trade a copywriter, digital marketer. I'm a homeschool mom. And about 8 months ago, my soldier retired from active duty Army military service. And that process led me to understand that I really had what I thought was preparation. I lacked severely in really understanding what I needed to know to retire successfully. So we muddled our way through it. And here we are now on the other side. But this has led me to SpouseLink, which is a subsidiary of AFMA, the American Armed Forces Mutual Aid Association. And so now what I get to do is I get to support military spouses that are going through that retirement and transition process with better resources and information, and just trying to build a community of support so that you have a place to go and you know what you're supposed to be doing and all of that kind of good stuff. So we've got some people. I'm super excited. Hi, Annette. Hi, Heidi. Thanks for jumping in and joining us today. I'm really glad to have you here. So I'm just going to get started because my guest today, this is the third time I've had Sarah on a live stream. So she and I put together a 4-part series about the financial aspects of retiring. The first one we talked about benefits you're keeping and losing. The second one we talked about budgeting 20 to 30 years out and what that looks like when you're trying to retire and create a 30-year budget. This one is on the TSP, and our last one, which is in about 2 weeks from now, is on SBP, the Survivor Benefit Plan versus life insurance, kind of that big age-old question every military retiring family has. So let me introduce Sarah. I'm going to go ahead and pull up her bio here because Sarah is amazing. So Sarah, I'm not going to read this because I read it every time and you can see it right here. But here's what I know from the last 3 live streams I've done with Sarah. 1, she is incredibly personable. She's so easy to talk to. She's super duper smart. She's great with numbers. She openly admits to loving money and she wants to keep as much of it as she can. So she's really smart when it comes to money stuff. The second thing is she has a great sense of humor. Every time I talk to her, we end up laughing over something. And then third, and this is probably the most important, Sarah goes the extra mile, like well above and beyond to make sure that others are really taken care of. So if you're thinking about talking with Sarah about anything that AFMA offers, because she is the member benefit coordinator for AFMA, I highly recommend that you connect with her today and just reach out and find out what she can do for you, because she's that kind of amazing. All right, I'm going to pull Sarah in. Let me pull this down. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Anna. As always, thank you so much for having me and for all those kind words.
Well, it's, I could read her bio again, but then it's like every live stream, it's the same content. I'm like, I'm going to go do something a little bit different. So hopefully that worked out.
It's great.
All right. So we're going to just jump right in, I think. Yeah. So, okay. Our topic today is, what do we do with that TSP? Okay. And this is kind of funny. I was telling Sarah this earlier, like behind the scenes, but kind of funny story. I worked for the State Department when we lived in Africa for the Army. We were there for the Army. It was a special duty assignment that my husband had. We lived in Kampala, Uganda. And I just discovered not too long ago that I have a TSP because I worked for the State Department. I didn't know that. I mean, that does not say a lot for my pay attentionness about my job and hiring skills. But I have a TSP that has just been sitting there that my husband's been managing along with his TSP because we didn't really quite know what we should be doing with it. So I'm super excited about our conversation today. And he's tuning in as well because both of us are like, we need this talk.
Yeah.
Even almost a year out, we need this conversation, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm so glad, first and foremost, you now know you have a TSP. That's great. So, and the first thing when you're talking about, transitioning and what to do with the TSP is we need to first understand the TSP, right? You just realized you have one. And so we need to do a little bit of understanding. So the TSP, like, what is it? It's the retirement plan offered to federal employees and members of the military. In 2018, changes were made where the government started matching contributions, but only for those people that joined after 2018. So that's kind of the fundamentals of what are we talking about? And we need to take a moment to better understand the TSP as a whole. And one reason is because if you've started your separation journey 1 to 3 years out, like recommended, you have time to make some changes. And if you haven't started your journey until the end, then it's still important to understand the TSP besides just deciding what to do with it. And so as we talk, about military spouses, we need to know this information. It might be your service member's TSP, or in your case, Anna, yours, but we need to be educated on it. So what I want to do first is let's just talk about investing for retirement. Let's just get a broad overview here first. This gives you a nice side-by-side of how we should be thinking about investing. And we're talking about, that 30-year plan, right? A TSP is like an employer 401k. You have the opportunity to save $19,500 per year. And if you don't have an employer 401k or just on your own, you can invest in an IRA. You can save $6,000 a year. And a side note to this, you can have both a 401k and an IRA together. And you need to know that and need to understand what that means, right?
Yeah. So I love this because 19,000 is significantly different than 6,000 when it comes to investing and retirement. So, I mean, we had this question come up or comment come up, right? It would have been nice if somebody told me about the TSP when I was in the Army, right? And I think the big note is if you're still active duty service nearing retirement, 3 to 5 years out, 1 to 3 years out, maximize what you can with your TSP because right now is where you're going to get the most benefit, right?
Absolutely. Great advice. Absolutely. So I couldn't have said it better.
Well, thank you very much. I am learning something from these live streams. I'm getting smarter every day. Okay, so if you're now, let's just be really clear, right? This is the service member's retirement account. So as a military spouse, it's not like I can dip into my spouse's TSP. It's his retirement account.
Yeah.
So what options then do we have for the non-working spouse? Because there's a lot of military spouses that struggle with maintaining employment because of PCS moves, young children, deployments, all the things, right? We all know all the issues for employment with spouses. So what can we do?
Right. So, and that's so important. There's a lot that we can do. You can have a spousal IRA. And just like you said, Anna, the TSP that is your service member's account, but you still need to be educated on what it means to kind of help them through that transition. But you yourself need to be educated on what you can do to invest. And you can hold a spousal IRA, which means if your spouse is working, you can open an IRA, whether it's a traditional or a Roth account, and you can contribute $6,000 a year into your own account. And this is for your work in the family unit, right? You might not be able to work outside the home, but you're still doing work. And then, let's just be honest, things happen in life. There could be a divorce or there could be death. And we need to be prepared on our own, right? As a military spouse. So there's something you can do and should be doing. And if you haven't been doing it, start today. It's not too late.
Yeah. One of the things that you and I talked about behind the scenes was just it doesn't matter if you're already in your 40s or your 50s even. If somebody is still working and you have a chance to open up one of these retirement accounts, absolutely do it. Like, this is super important for you to build your own financial footing, I guess is the best way to put it.
Build your own wealth, in the family unit. So it's all going to help. If the end goal is to get to retirement in 30 years or whatever, it's all going to help.
Yeah, exactly. So we know that there are two different types of IRAs, right? You've got a Roth and a traditional. Let me just move this over. So can you talk to us just a little bit about the difference between those two and why they're important?
Yeah. So, we're talking about the TSP. We're talking about investing in general. And in the TSP, you have the option to put money into a Roth or a traditional. Just like, say you start this spousal IRA and you're like, okay, well, do I put it into a Roth or a traditional? Basic understanding of that is a Roth account, your taxes are taken out before your money goes in to the TSP or the investment account. Therefore, when you're ready to take that money out at 20, 30 years, whenever that might be, there aren't taxes taken out at that time. And so a traditional is your money goes into the account before your taxes are taken out, which means then when you go to take the money out, you're going to pay taxes on that. And this is important to understand. It's important for a military spouse to understand, not only for your own spousal IRA, but also for preparing for the future. That 30 years down the road, you and your spouse together should be making and understanding these options and how your potential tax bracket later might have effect on this. So you've got to have an open line of communication in understanding, okay, if I'm going to open a spousal IRA, I'm going to do it this way. Where's your TSP sitting? How are you investing that? So a conversation has to be had, but that's kind of that's the basics of a Roth and a traditional.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, so I just want to pull this comment up right here. Christina says, hi, Sarah, it's $20,500 for 2022. So apparently contribution amounts have upped. Thank you, Christina, for letting us know that. We appreciate that comment. Yeah. Okay, so all right, so now we've talked about the Roth and traditional, right? So this foundation is really important because knowing kind of how your money works within these investment and retirement accounts, I think is super important. So let's talk specifically now about your TSP.
Yes, let's dive in. And thank you so much, Christina. You're right. I'm still stuck last year. I've got to get my brain forward. It is a new year. So let's dive into the funds themselves. So while your money is in the TSP, it's going to be in one of these funds, G through L. This is what you've kind of got to work with. And this is showing your risk taken with each fund. And again, this is important because when we get to the question of what do we do with our TSP, we need to understand the TSP. So in investing, you have consistency combined with time will give you kind of your optimal results. However, you need your asset allocation or your diversification to be right for you. And that's a you question. It's based off of your age and it's based off of your risk, which leads us to risk tolerance.
Risk tolerance. Okay, so I asked you this question behind the scenes. How do you even figure out your risk tolerance? And then because I was just super curious, I went on to AFMA, which is where Sarah works, and I went looking for, do they have a risk test that you could take that's their own? And guess what, everybody, they do. They have a free risk analysis test that you can take. And it's super cool. I took it twice today on varying degrees, like offering varying degrees of like what my comfort would be. Mm-hmm. It took me less than 5 minutes. It's literally like 5 questions. And you kind of like can play with it a little bit to see where you fall. So anyway, I'm going to throw that link in the comments because it's going to be super important for the very next thing that she brings up, right?
It is. So we have this, kind of, you can see where these funds lie and you can see the risk from low to high. And so what does that mean, right? It's our risk tolerance. And you've got this great graphic that shows this is an example, right? This is kind of like a little cheat sheet, but basically risk tolerance is what financial advisors calculate through a series of questions, right? You can do those online, and you can talk with somebody to determine, based on your age and your riskiness to lose money, what should your diversified portfolio look like. So this chart shows you the breakdown of risk in a portfolio, right? What that would look like. And this is just an example, but it's important to understand this for when we talk about later, what are we actually going to do with this TSP? You know, we've got to know our risk. This is one of the principal things.
Yes. Okay. So you can see I dropped that link into all the different places that you can be watching. So hopefully just click on that and take your risk assessment and then come back to this little cheat sheet. Actually, I'm going to post these tomorrow on my LinkedIn account. So, and then if you are on our email list, it's going to go out. These graphics are going to go out to you directly. So you'll have them just in your inbox. But this is that cheat sheet. And what I found was when I was very conservative, I was at that 25 to 34 level. And then when I got a little bit more excited, I never really went past the 54 number. So I'm not a super risky person apparently, but I think that also, since we're already in retirement, is probably pretty normal.
Yeah. So, and that's something to have a conversation with, right? Like that's something that, you know, a financial advisor to open up the dialogue of conversation. And that's really important because somebody can kind of enlighten or give you a different perspective of, well, why maybe your risk should be a little bit more or why maybe your risk should be a little bit less. You know, at the end of the day, we all have to sleep well, right? We have to be able to go to bed at night and have that peace of mind and to sleep well. So talking through that, you know, is really important. And you're right. You know, that's why we talk about age is a really big factor in risk, right? The older you get, the less kind of risk you want to take. So you're right on track.
So I'm curious, can you talk to me just quickly about the recommended portfolio section where it says like 3% fixed income? I get the 0 stocks, 100% bonds, like in terms of portfolio, right. But what's that percentage and the second part to that?
Sure. So this is really just showing you kind of an example of if you go and talk to somebody and a financial advisor says, well, you know, I think you should do this. Well, you want to have a little bit of education to say, well, but what does that look like, right? Like, what is my asset allocation? What does that mean in terms of my kind of safety net of having those bonds and those secure things? And then how much vulnerability do I want out in the market? And so this kind of goes through and shows like what the portfolio would be called, like a balanced, you know, you're kind of in the middle, right? You're going to have those percentages split a bit more. And then, you know, you get less risk. You're going to have more fixed income, those bonds, those slower growing, nice, stable things. And then when you're real young and you're, you know, 19 and you're starting off and you're doing this right, you want to be just all in the market. I want to take all the risk I can. I got nothing but time.
So as much as I'd love to be a day trader, I definitely do not want to be doing that. That is so far out of my skill set and interest level for that matter, you know, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we've kind of talked about the basics of investing and the different kinds of investment opportunities there are. And this leads us up to that big question, right? So now you've got this TSP, you're getting out of the military. What are your options?
Yeah. So you have a couple options. One, don't forget about it, maybe. Don't forget it's there. So yes, we should be able to look at our TSP and understand what it all means. And that's important. It's important for a military spouse because you need to understand what it means and how to contribute to it, and also how to invest in the civilian world, and now what to do with it. So once you leave the service, you cannot keep investing in this TSP. So your options are, you can keep it there. You can keep it with TSP. but you now have to manage it, right? So he showed kind of the different funds that you can be in. You're responsible now for that asset allocation. Nobody else is going to be responsible for it. And some people love doing it. Some people are do-it-yourselfers. They love to rebalance. They love to diversify. They like doing that. But you can't put any more money into it. So it's just going to sit there and hopefully grow if you're managing it. Now, for those who don't want to manage it, you have a couple of options. You can move it or roll it over. There's no tax consequence to this. You can move it to a firm that does actively manage accounts. You can also roll it into your new employer's 401k based off of that company. You can move it into a broad brokerage firm that's not going to actively manage the account, but they might have different funds than the TSP. So you would still be responsible for managing it, but you have different funds to look at. And all of this kind of comes to this bottom line, which I'm sure we all can kind of guess where we're going, is you need to do something and you need to ask questions if you don't know where to start. You need to reach out to financial advisors. Start asking the questions of, what is my risk tolerance if you don't know it? What would you recommend for my diversified portfolio? These are my goals 30 years down the road. How do you recommend I get there and diversify my portfolio now? So it comes down to, you've got to start asking questions. You have to do something, even if it's keeping the TSP at TSP, you're still doing something. You are actively saying, I'm going to be accountable for this, right? And that's important for a military spouse to understand, because it is not yours, right? This isn't your account, but you need to have the conversation with your significant other, right? Open the dialogue.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think that there's so much on the plate of the retiring service member. Like, this is the last thing that it might not be the last thing they're thinking of, but it's not a priority because it's not a must do before they get out of the service, right? I mean, it's been 8 months and ours are still just sitting there with, my service member. He's managing them. He's moving stuff around in the funds and whatever he's doing with that. I don't pay much attention to it. I just found out I had one, so whatever.
There you go.
Yeah,
but it's important, I think it's important, kind of like you said, it's okay to take a pause and a breath, because there's so much going on with the service member and all this other paperwork and VA disabilities that's happening. And do I elect SBP or do I pick insurance, right? There's all these other things. It's okay to take a moment and say, let's just keep it here, but you've got to do something with it. You've got to make a decision with it. So just don't forget completely about it.
Right. No ignoring it. Okay. So let me just ask you this. Is there a time frame where you do have to make a decision, or 10 years down the road, can you choose to roll it into something and it's no big deal?
Yeah. So as long as it's there and it's staying in those accounts, it's in that investable, TSP, that 401k, you can roll it. You could roll it in a year. You could roll it in 2 years, roll it over. One of the things that I will say is sometimes people say, well, I'm just going to take money out of this and have the cash and then go buy a house or something like that. Please don't do that without talking to somebody. That's where you get into financial consequences. That's where you start paying, penalties and taxes come into play if you're just like, oh, I'm just going to pull this money out. Please don't do that. Talk to somebody first before that. And a financial advisor, that's what they're there to do. A good financial advisor is going to give you that advice, and they're going to explain the why for you. They're going to tell you why it's important to do something or not maybe to do something.
Okay, so that totally perfectly leads us into our next question, right? Which is, let's say that I've decided that I want to move my TSP, but I'm not quite sure exactly where to move it. I think I want somebody to manage it, because I clearly don't want that responsibility. I personally, I'm talking for myself, but so it's because I know that about myself, because I know I am not a good daily check the funds person. What kinds of things should I be asking, like a brokerage firm or a management firm, to make sure that I'm finding someone that's going to work well for me, that's going to, you know, have my best interest in mind. Like all those things that get scary when all of a sudden you're like, I'm going to give them this huge sum of money and then hope that they do something positive with it. And I'm going to pay them to do that. Right.
Yeah, that's really scary, right? That's very scary. So some questions is be careful, right? So one of the things, be careful and go with your gut first and foremost. You know, we all have that gut feeling. You can trust somebody, but there's about 7 questions that you would want to ask. And it's okay to ask, to call around, ask as many different firms that you can find, right? One of the first ones is, do you have a fiduciary standard? That's really important because that means they're going to be adhered and held to the law to do what's right by their clients. Next is, who is my point of contact for handling my account? You know, do you have one person, like a real person you're going to call? Or is this a 1-800 number and you're just going to get anybody? You know, what's the point of contact? What is your fee, of course, for managing the account? And what does actively managing mean for their company? That can mean a lot of different things. So understanding what that means for the company you're talking with. Do you have proprietary funds that you invest in? That's just kind of getting an idea of, you know, what they're investing in. How often does someone communicate with me about my account? So are you going to get an annual review? Are you going to get a quarterly review? Is someone going to pick up the phone and call you and say, let's talk about your account? Or do you just get a statement in the mail? And do you do a risk tolerance assessment? If so, what would your recommended asset allocation look like for me? And anybody should be able to tell you that before you hand them your money, right? And then do you offer financial planning services and at what cost? Because that's important when you're talking about doing a transition in a life event and you're talking about planning and retiring for 30 years down the road. You might need a financial plan. Through this conversation, you might all of a sudden realize I've got a lot of outliers and I need to get it all together. So if the place that's handling your money is also going to be able to do a financial plan, you know, that's kind of a full service there. So those are kind of the 7 questions that I would recommend asking, and ask as many people as you can.
Yeah, I love that. I love these 7 questions. This is another one of those graphics that I'm going to throw out on LinkedIn tomorrow. So this one, and then the riskalize cheat sheet is going to be one of the ones that comes out as well. And so I'm excited for people to have this information. I mean, I knew that I could throw it into this or throw it into that, but this really kind of solidifies like, okay, here are my real options that I have with this TSP. Yeah. And if I choose this option, I love, Sarah, that you took us to that next step. It's not just like, yeah, go put it in a wealth management companies and let them manage it for you. It's not that simple, right? It really is all about what ultimately your family's financial goals are. Yeah. How invested are you in spending your day looking at your accounts? How much time and energy do you have? Do you have an inclination for that? You know, and that's going to really play into choosing what to do with your TSP,
right? It's not, and I know, I wish I could say this is what everybody should do, right? But there's not that answer. This is what you should educate yourself on and know, and then make a decision for your family and have the conversation, you know, with your service member about what are we going to do with this TSP? Let's put it on our radar. Let's know that we've got to do something with it. Even if it's keeping it at TSP, you're still making an active decision, right? You're actively deciding to do that while knowing all of your other options that are out there that might be better suited.
Yeah. And here's the other really wonderful thing that I love about what Sarah talked about today. It's not that there's a right or wrong answer. The right answer is not move it. The right answer is not roll it into your employer account. The right answer is not keep it where it's at, manage it yourself. There is no right answer as far as across the board. It's going to come down to your risk level, your capabilities, what you want to do with it, what kind of growth you want to see. I mean, all those kinds of things are going to play into this. And so again, let me just throw out there, if you want more information on this, you need to talk to this This lady right here, this lady right here, connect with her and ask these questions. She's so smart about this stuff. Seriously, I love it. So, okay, so we have Annette that says, this is one of my issues now, where to roll the TSP over. Annette, meet Sarah. Sarah, meet Annette.
Nice to meet you, Annette. Let's get connected. And you can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on afma.com. You can send me an email, sbumgardner@afma.com. LinkedIn seems to be a really great way that I've found that people are very easily able to connect with me and then send me messages, and then we can kind of talk offline if need be. But yes, Annette, meet me. Come, let's chat.
Yeah, for sure. So like Sarah said, these are all the different ways that you can connect with her. And so I highly recommend that you do that. And then just to kind of close out our topic for today, we have one more SpouseLink live stream with Sarah. It's going to be very sad when we're done with this series. I'm going to call you and be like, hi, Sarah, want to talk numbers?
Yes, I do.
So, okay. So our next SpouseLink live stream is all about SVP or life insurance. And it's going to be similar to this TSP, right? We're going to talk about each of the two, and we're going to weigh options. And there is not going to be a, you should do this moment, right? Like where Sarah's going to say, this is the only right answer. Because it's going to come down to what your goals are, what your family needs, what your health levels are. All of that kind of stuff is going to play into this. So join us on February 24th, and we look forward to having you. And then please connect with me, connect with Sarah on LinkedIn, and then I want you to fill out this survey for Sarah. So I'm going to drop it in hold on, I'm going to drop this Jot link into the comments. And then Sarah, can you tell them what this is?
Yeah, so it takes like 2 seconds, or it can take longer if you want to give me more feedback. But I really, try and gear this towards information of, is this useful? Is this what you're wanting to hear? What's something maybe we could do better? I'm really here to be there of help. So let me know how I'm doing. Let me know if there's some other topic you think it's really important to military spouses right now. I was a military spouse for 11 years, but that was 4 years ago. So what's happening now? Tell me what I need to talk about. And so that's what this Jot form is just give me a little bit of feedback and see if we're, on the right track. Because I really do want to cater this information to be able to help the best I can.
Thank you. Okay, there's one more link I'm going to drop in for everyone to pay attention to. And this is going to be the link that lets you register so that you're getting the information directly into your inbox. If you would like to have links directly to the next live stream, if you want the downloads and handouts that we've been providing sent directly to your inbox, then I want you to just head over here. All you need is your first name and your email address. That's all we're looking for. So go pop your information in there and you'll just be added to the email list. I don't spam anyone, I promise. I am not a spammer. So you don't have to worry about any of that. All right. I think that we're done. Sarah, thank you so very much for joining me on today's live stream. This was, again, amazing information as always. And I can't wait for the next one.
I know. I'm looking forward to it. That's the big question, right? SVP, the other big question, SVP versus life insurance.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to dive into the numbers.
Anyone that's been hanging out in the retirement Facebook pages, these two questions are asked over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. Something about their TSP and who's choosing SVP and who's going with life insurance or who's doing both. So those are the big questions that everybody has. So, all right, everyone, thank you so much. And we will see you next time, February 24th at 10:30 a.m. CST for another Sarah and Anna live stream with SpouseLink. All right. Thank you and have a good day.
Bye.